Hello, you wonderful people. In this video, I'm going to show you how easily and quickly you could get started with Strapi 5. Yes, Strapi 5 is out, so we're all super excited. So if you've never used Strapi before, Strapi is a headless CMS that allows you to manage your content and deliver it to any front end of your framework using REST or GraphQL API endpoints. So here you could see there's an awesome admin area where your content editors or you could manage your content, and you are able to get all that data through REST API to power your amazing front-end applications. So you're probably wondering, why would you use a headless CMS? Well, because it would save you thousands of hours of time. Instead of having to build a whole backend implementation from scratch, you could rely on Strapi to do so. And today's video, I'm going to show you how to set it up quickly so you could take it for a quick test run. We're going to get started literally in minutes, and once you have a working API, I'm also going to show you one advanced feature that you could do when looking to populate your content. But more on that in just a minute. So let's jump in and get started. Here in the main website, I'm gonna go ahead and literally copy this command. I already have my terminal installed running node 20. So I'm gonna go ahead, paste the command and click enter. It's going to go ahead and walk us through the setup steps. It's going to ask us to log in if we want to use Strapi Cloud. For the moment, we're just going to skip that part. Yes, we want to start with a SQLite database, start with the example structured data, and this is something that's new. And yes, we're going to click yes here because this is going to create some example content types for us to use in our project. Click enter, start with TypeScript, of course, install dependencies, yes, initialize Git repository, yes, 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 and yes, and it's going to go ahead and set everything up for us. And while it's doing its thing, let me take a quick sip of coffee. This coffee, bitterly good and delicious. Once your project is installed, let me go ahead, clear my terminal here. Let's cd into our project, and all we would have to do is type yarn develop to start our Strapi application. Once everything starts, you're going to be greeted with this admin UI window. Go ahead and add your information to locally create your admin account to log in. So I am going to do that now. And of course, the most secure password is monkey1234, especially when you're working on local environment where no one has access to. But when you deploy your application, of course, make sure you choose a stronger password. So here we are in our Strapi admin panel. If we take a look here at our content manager, we already have some content available. We have our articles, we have our authors, our categories. And if you take a look at the article, you see your article data represented here with Strapi. Strapi has this concept of blocks where you could create different blocks that you decide what data they're going to manage, which is pretty awesome because it allows you to have flexibility of how you structure your content in your Strapi application. Nice. Now that we have our dummy data, you will notice that is in draft. So let's go back to articles. We're going to click on this checkbox to select all of them, and we're going to go ahead, publish all the items. Now that we have all of our articles published, we are going to go to settings, and under users permissions, roles, click public, check out articles. You're going to see that our permissions are already enabled. We have find and find one. If we take a look at find, we're going to see that we could go to this endpoint API articles and get our data. So let me make sure that this is saved, and I'm going to, in my browser, navigate to localhost 1337 and the endpoint that we provided. And as you could see here, we are getting our data. Now there's one gotcha with Strapi 4 and 5, and it's not really a gotcha. But when you're building applications that are going to have massive amount of data, you want to make sure that you only return the data that your API, or your front end, I should say, is asking your API. And this is when we take a look at our screen here. We notice that we are getting the document ID, the title, the description, but if you paid close attention, inside our Strapi app, when we take a look at our articles, we do have the title, description, the slug, but we also have the cover image, we have the author, the category, and our blocks. which is not something we're getting here in our response. And that is actually by default. In Strapi, to prevent you from underfetching or overfetching, we have populate flags that allow you to tell Strapi exactly what content you need to get. And this prevents you from overfetching data that's not required by your front end, which not only makes your app more performant, but it makes it much easier to work with your API. If you're new to Strapi, this might seem a little bit confusing, but once you understand how it works, you are able to do this without any issues. But this does require you to understand Strapi's populate and filtering. So first, let's take a look at the resource that you have to allow you to create your query strings that you could pass to your endpoint. And then I'm going to show you one advanced method of how you could create Strapi middleware where you're actually able to set default populate, which is pretty cool. Yes, you can do it on the front end, but why not offload that logic and have it work on our back end? So let's start with the easiest and take a look how we could update our query to make sure that we're getting all of our data. In Google, if you search Strapi Query Builder, you're going to get this interactive query builder tool that will show you by example of how you could structure your queries. And if you Google demystifying Strapi's populate and filtering, you're going to see an article that I wrote for Strapi v4 that covers all the necessary things you need to know. This is also applicable to Strapi 5, so if you understand the basics here, you're going to be all set and ready to go. But that's okay. This is why I have this YouTube channel, so you could ask me questions in the comments and I'll be able to help you with any of the questions that you have. But in a nutshell, taking a look at our application, for instance, if we want to populate our author, categories, and cover, we would tell Strapi to give us those things. So let's start by taking a look how we could get our cover image, our author, and our category returned in our response. So we're going to use this query builder, and I'm going to go ahead, point to our articles endpoint, so then we could copy and paste. And here, what we're going to do, we're just going to delete all of this except populate. And populate is one of the flags where you're able to use to tell you what fields or sections you want to populate. For instance, if we take a look at our Strapi application, we have our author's category. If we take a look at our author has their name and email and avatar associated for them. So what we could do, we could actually say we want to return the name field and the email field for our author. And the way we could accomplish this inside our query builder, in fields, we could just say, hey, return the name and return the email. Our author also has an avatar. So let's go ahead and get the avatar with the URL to this image. So in the query builder, under author, because that's what we're trying to populate, I'm going to say populate. And we're going to say we want to get the avatar. And on the avatar, we're going to populate a couple of our fields. Our image has a URL and alternative text. And there's more items that you could populate, but I'm just going to start with the most basic ones. And here we could see we get our query string. So let's go ahead and copy this. And I'm going to go ahead and paste it in here, which is now going to hit the endpoint with the provided query params. Boom. And now when you could see our response, we are now getting our author, including the avatar. And what's awesome about this is we're only getting the data that we're asking for. And we could follow a similar path to get our categories that you could see here in Strapi. And we could also get our cover image, which we didn't do yet. So let's go ahead and quickly do it. So in my query builder here, I'm going to say we also want to get the cover image. And from the image, we want the following fields, which is going to be exactly what we used here for our avatar image. And if I copy this URL and we update our query, notice now we're getting our cover image, we're getting our author information, and finally, let's go ahead and get the categories. So here, I'm going to say categories, and we're going to say populate true. So if you just want to populate everything first level deep, you could just use populate true to accomplish that. And again, if you have any questions, you could always ask me in the description below, but you could also check out this article that I wrote for Strapi 4, which I'm gonna update for Strapi 5 to make sure that everything's up to date. And I just noticed it's not categories, but categories, so make sure we fix it. Let's go ahead and grab our query string. Now that we update our query, notice that we're getting our cover image, our category, our author, and all of that information. So that's awesome. We took a look how we could pass queries from our front end to our back end with specific populate flags that allow us to create the data that we need, which prevents us from overfetching or underfetching, which allows us to make sure that we're only getting the data that our front end needs, nothing more, nothing less. But with that being said, what if you don't want to write that logic on the front end and instead you want to have default population? Well, you could actually accomplish this on your backend, and that's exactly what we're going to take a look in Strapi. This is going to be considered a more intermediate topic, but once you know how to do this, it's not that difficult, and I'd like to share it with you now. And if you were following along and you have this query, don't go too far because we're going to use part of it. So first thing we want to do is inside our terminal, we're going to stop our application and clear the screen. We actually have an amazing helper command that allows you to generate certain things like policies, middlewares, or even additional collection types right here in the terminal. So we're going to run a command called yarn strapi generate. And this is going to start our CLI tool. Now, in our case, we want to create a middleware that we can use to set up default populate logic. I'm going to go ahead to the middleware option, click enter. And we're going to call it populate article, which is going to be responsible for setting up default population for our post. When I click enter, we want to add this to an existing collection type. So I'm going to go add the middleware to existing API. And notice we have the same options that you see in your Strapi application. So we have articles, authors, categories, users, about, and global, and so on. We're going to add it to our article. So I'm going to go ahead, select article, and click enter. And this went ahead and created a new file that we're going to modify in just a minute. And the reason that I want to show you this is because I want to show you that we were able to get started with Strapi out of the box, no problem. But Strapi goes way beyond that by giving you level of customizations that you could do in a programmatic manner. And this is what we're doing here. And this is the magic of Strapi, is that it allows you to get started fast and easy without needing to write any custom code. But as we show here today, if you want to add something specific or you want to improve certain functionality, you are able to do that. And that's what we're doing here. So I'm going to go ahead and open my project in my code editor. And inside the source folder, you're going to find another folder called API. This is where you're going to find all your collection types or endpoints that are available in your Strapi application. We're going to go to article, and you're going to see this middleware folder with populate article.ts, which is a file we just created using our CLI command. Once you select it, you will see your bare minimum middleware that was scaffolded for you, ready to be modified. So first, we're going to start by moving this logic that we had in our query builder that we passed from the front end. We're going to move it to our back end. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. So here, we're going to create a new const, and we're going to say populate. This is going to store our population logic that we just created. So go ahead and copy this example that we had, and let's paste it in. Nice. Now that we have our populate filtering in place, we need to pass it to our controller. So here inside our middleware, we're going to go ahead and say ctx that has an object called query, and we're going to create a new object that's going to destructure the original query, but then we're going to rewrite it with our populate. And that's all we have to do inside our middleware. The final step, we have to apply this middleware to our route. Taking a look in our Strapi application, under articles, we have our routes folder. So let's go ahead inside the file called article.ts. Inside here, inside this create core router method, we are able to pass additional object with configuration. And we're going to allow it on our find method, and we're going to reference the middleware that we just created. It's inside our API articles middleware, and it's called Populate article. And the name is based on this convention. We are inside an API folder, inside article content type, and we have a middleware called Populate article. And that's how you get this name here. We could also add this to our find one method. And this should be it. So to quickly review, we created a middleware using the CLI, which defines our pre-populate logic that we're using, and we're setting it on our server inside the CTX query param. And what's awesome, once we define this default logic, our user from the front end can't just pass anything willy-nilly to get extra data. They're only going to be able to get the data that we want them to get and what we define in this populate object. Now that we have created our middleware, we went into our routes article.ts file, and we told our route on the find method and find one, please go ahead and use this middleware. So finally, let's go ahead and restart our project and see what we get. So now if we refresh, everything works the same, but wait a second, you're still passing the query from the front end. Let's go ahead and delete it. So now we're just going to our 1337 API articles, and notice without passing any additional query params, we are able to get all of our data. And the reason this is happening is because we defined this populate logic in our backend, which is pretty cool. So finally, again, notice we're getting our cover, our category, and our author image. If you take a look at our post, we also have our blocks, rich text, quote, media, rich text, and slider. We want to make sure that we get those items as well. And now instead of having to do this change in the front end, we're able to just define it once in our backend. So back inside our populate article, we're going to scroll up to our populate function here, where we populate a cover, category, and author. And now we are going to populate our blocks. Now I'm going to paste this in, but what we're doing is we're following a similar convention, and let me make this a little bit smaller so we could fit everything on the screen, but we're saying, hey, in blocks on a component called media, go ahead and populate the following fields. And we're doing the same thing for the slider, the shared quote, and shared rich text, and so on. So inside of our Strapi application, if we take a look at the content type builder, you're going to see we have the shared folder, which has a media, quote, rich text, SEO, and slider components. If you take a look at the code that we wrote, we literally are saying inside the shared folder, media component, go ahead and populate the following items. So if you're wondering where I got the shared, it is the name of the folder where our components live. So now that we added this populate blocks logic, if we go back where we just have the cover, category, and author, the things that we just previously populated, let's hit refresh, and notice that we have still our cover, category, author, but notice now we're getting all of our blocks data. And again, you can of course do this easily from your front end, but if you want to predefine or lock down your endpoints, you are able to create a custom middleware like we had here that predefines your populate logic and then passes it to your controller. And all of this done server side, giving you that extra step, allowing you to secure your application. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Getting started with Strapi was so easy that we literally did it in the first 2-3 minutes of this video. And then we just talked about populate and filtering, an important concept of using Strapi CMS. Again, when you're just starting out, you could easily work with the populate and filtering on your front-end application. But if you want to predefine those server side, you could do that as well. And if you're like, man, I have no idea what you still talked about, subscribe to this channel. I am working on a brand new Strapi 5 crash course that I already started recording lessons for. And if you go to codingafter30.com to my website that's still work in progress, you could have access to all these courses. All the courses that I publish on this channel are absolutely free. You don't even need to sign up. By signing up, it does remember what classes you're taking, but you could just click on sign in and click sign in to use this dummy account that I have here. And you'll be able to go to all courses. And here you could see the courses that I'm currently working on. Take a look at the Strapi 5 crash course that we're working on. So far, we have 2 lessons, how to get started, and then building our first component. And the cool part about this is not only do you get the video, but you get all the necessary nodes and code snippets associated with that lesson. But enough about me plugging my own website on my own YouTube channel, giving you free courses. I want to thank you for stopping by, and let me know if you want me to make more Strapi 5 tutorials. I'm also going to show you how to use them with 3 different frameworks, Next.js, Astro, and Remix. But with that being said, thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you found this video valuable, and I'll see you in the next one.